Unless it's a lock. There's no such thing as a lock. Unless it's a lock. If it's a lock, it's a little different.
Shamil and Biggie Boy, gotta settle this beef. In the ring they'll clash, seeking ultimate relief. All fighters hungry, eyeing the prize. Will be the one to feast the truest of the guys. Oh yeah, get ready for the meatlock. The crowd's hyped, adrenaline rushing through their veins. Shamil's got the speed, Biggie Boy's got the strength. They're throwing punches, dodging blows left and right. In this meaty battle, who's gonna take the bite? Meaty Boy in MMA predicts the outcome tonight. Shamil or Biggie Boy, who's gonna shine so bright? The meatlock is ready, hammer's gonna fall. YOLOs and predictions, it's time to settle it all.
It's the rejected Saudi Arabia card this weekend, Meat Boy. Remember, these are the fights that initially were supposed to head out to the kingdom, but they rejected it, and it's officially an Apex card as a result. But with a headliner like Biggie Boy versus Shmeal, kind of makes sense to me. But before we even talk about this week's breakdowns, Meat Boys, last week, UFC Mexico, some pretty sick fights last week, I thought. We started with the meatlock. Obviously, Raul Rosas Jr. pulled out minutes before the contest, so it goes down as a push officially. But what were your thoughts on the action last week, Meat Boy? Were there any fights that stood out to you, and just overall UFC Mexico takeaways?
Yeah, the fight that stood out to me the most, to be honest, is the Brian Ortega fight. I was very surprised on how good he is at getting beaten up and somehow surviving and getting the job done. I mean, he like broke his ankle in the first 2 seconds, which blew my mind. And then he just shook it out, said a prayer, and Yair beat him up for the whole first round. Second round came in, and it was just a mauling ever after that. And Yair just was helpless. It reminded me, of when Yair, couldn't stuff a takedown, gets beats up on the ground, and apparently nothing's changed. It's the same Yair. He hasn't leveled up on the ground. And T-City really exposed that. That honestly caught me off guard. I didn't think a Frankie Edgar 2.0 would ever happen again.
Yeah, it was crazy to see, right? Because that fight against Frankie Edgar that you referenced was way back in 2017. We know the story. Frankie just takes him down repeatedly and absolutely bludgeons Yair. But since then, we had thought that perhaps his ground game had improved. And I was even last week talking about Yair's ground game and the slick submission he had over Josh Emmett and all the work that these Mexican UFC fighters are displaying off their back. But again, he ran into the same issue with another top-heavy guy like Brian Ortega, who just simply was able to keep him down. It seemed like once Brian Ortega got that first takedown, he was, I don't know, it almost seemed like he was shocked by how easy and how little resistance was being offered back to him, that he kind of just stuck there and ends up getting a sweet third-round finish for himself. I was a little bit disappointed with his work after the fact. Seemed like they interviewed him. They set him up for a layup opportunity to claim his next shot against Ilia Topuria, and I didn't hear Ilia Topuria's name. So I think Brian T-City might have fumbled an opportunity there, maybe Sandhagen himself a little bit, but nonetheless, a sweet win for him nonetheless. And some other hyped up Mexican prospects really did deliver on the night. I mean, even though Rosas Jr. Got the butterflies beforehand, some of these guys didn't, right? Manuel Torres took out Chris Duncan. Easy light work first round submission. I know you were on Chris Duncan, and made sense to me because Chris Duncan is a tough UFC fighter, but I did call Torres to get that one done, and he came through. And then also Daniel Zellhuber. You had Meat Boy Prado, who I like. I like his potential. He's 21 years old and has a lot of hype himself. But what do you think about Daniel Zellhuber?
Yeah, Zellhuber, I mean, he looked very good. I mean, it didn't surprise me at all that he absolutely, won that fight. Young kid, lengthy. He's got the size, the speed, the endurance. He's got the jiu-jitsu, the stand-up. He's really all well-rounded. This kid's gonna be a problem. Prado was no joke, and I don't want to say he made it look easy, but he did a very good job in getting that victory.
Yeah, he did a great job, and I mean the kid's young himself. That being Zellhuber, he's only 24 years old, so makes sense why they're calling him the Golden Boy. Makes sense why he was third from the top on this UFC Mexico card, and very exciting things for Zellhuber in the future for sure. And another fight that we talked about, Fares ZM won a snoozer versus Claudio Poyes, aka Claudio Poyes is still bad now 16 months later, and then Muhammad Naimov, the Hillman, absolutely just smoked Eric Silva in about 40 seconds. So Eric Silva's on his way to BKFC, but nonetheless, what do you think about the meat event, Meat Boy? You took Roy Val as about a plus 250 dog, and that ticket ended up cashing for you. I had Moreno to win it, and I thought Moreno did win it. I thought maybe he won 3-2, but It wasn't a convincing argument from my end because those rounds were hella close, and I was pretty unsure heading into the judges. But what do you think about Brandon versus Brandon? And did you two score the fight for Royval?
Yeah, no, I had Royval winning the whole way. First round, I thought was very lackluster. I was like, oh man, Dana's me mad. Nothing's happening. But then they started moving a little bit at the last minute. Second round, so I don't really know who got the first round because it was so lackluster in combat. But round two, I honestly thought that Moreno won that one, so it could have been 2-0 right there. But I thought the 3-4-5, 100% Royval. I was honestly surprised to see split, but I think it was a split because of that first round. I think that first round was a YOLO guess, and then I think they might have given one of the fourth or fifth round to Moreno, but it just seemed that Royval just started pulling back in there, and dude's a raw dog. He does not stop. He is so crazy. Every time he gets on the ground, he just loses it. It's like I don't know. I've never seen anyone work as much as he does when he's on his back. Like he does not stay there. He's so fast and he's pretty strong for his size, to be honest. It was pretty surprising to see because I'm just thinking of Moreno versus Figgy, and Figgy has insane strength. Moreno was kind of bullying him on the fight where he got choked out and got his belt back. So I was just very surprised to see that Royval was kind of out strengthening him a little bit. So that one kind of surprised me, but yeah, I thought Royval was gonna get done, and Raw Dog, he got it done, and he cut a sick promo. He did it the way you're supposed to do it. T City need to take notes.
Yeah, seriously, T City. Hopefully, he was taking notes because Raw Dog was in there calling his shots and making his case, making his claim known, essentially, which is always what you want to see, especially with the guys at the top of the card. And you mentioned the scorecards for that fight; they're kind of all over the place, right? Two judges scored it 3-2 in favor of Royval, and then the one dissenting judge actually scored it 4-1 for Moreno. That was Junichiro Kamijo, and he gave round one to Moreno. Mike Bell gave round one to Moreno, but Chris Lee actually scored that first round for Royval. So there wasn't even much uniformity for any round, essentially. The scorecards were all over the place, but nonetheless, Royval emerges with that split, calls his shot, and just great stuff from Royval. I was particularly impressed. You touched on him out strengthening Moreno, but I mean the cardio too. This dude somehow he's able to throw 500 strikes. He's literally not even breathing heavy, and these fights were happening at 6,000 plus altitude in Mexico City. So I know on embedded last title shot for Royval, he was, I just finished a 20-mile run at 6:30 pace. I mean, this dude, Royval, is just built different when it comes to the cardio. So for me, I shouldn't have been surprised by what he was doing, but even all things considered, I was still somehow surprised at the output Royval was able to demonstrate because that dude is next level for sure. But nonetheless, me boy, I went 4-2. You went 2-4. No meatlock to report, but we have a sweet meatlock for this week. Should we jump into these?
Well, 100%. This card, it's a sleeper. Maybe not as cool as UFC Mexico, but it's a nice one.
It's a sleeper for sure, and it's a fight that's stacked with a lot of undefeated prospects. There are 5 or 6 of them, and the first one, switch us right over, Meat Boy, because we're jumping into the meatlock right away. First undefeated prospect in this one is, we're locking the homie Shamil Gaziev. We think it's a happy Shmeal in this one over the biggie bag Jairzinho Rozenstruik, because Happy Shmeal has only been dominating, and what we saw from him most recently in technically his UFC debut was against Budai the Baddies, aka Martin Budai, and he absolutely destroyed our boy Budai the Baddies. And while Budai the Baddies doesn't have the sexiest style, the guy is kind of a successful UFC fighter. He has a lot of wins. He went on a nice win streak where he was really dismantling guys with his, I don't want to say lackluster performances, but successful because he was getting them done. But either way, our boy Happy Shmeal was able to absolutely smoke him. And we know the story from Shmeal, right? He's undefeated, and he used to be a Dagestani volleyball player, and then suddenly they're like, hey, wait, this guy's about 6'5", 260. Perhaps he can have a career in MMA. So he makes the transition from volleyball to mixed martial arts, and the rest is essentially history. And I find it pretty striking and fascinating that the UFC, in just this guy's second fight, they're already putting him on top of the bill, and they already tried to sell this as a main event to Saudi Arabia. And yes, it got rejected, but the fact that they were trying to book this fight there in the first place to me says the UFC has a lot of hype behind this kid and thinks that he's going to be the next future champ potentially. So he's taking on Biggie Boy, who came into the UFC by storm, right? He had that nice early 4-fight win streak where he was knocking everyone out early and often. But if we really inspect that run he went on, he took out Junior Albini, aka the guy that wears a diaper. He slept Alan Crowder, who is truly awful. He beat Andrei Arlovsky with the first punch of the match, and then we always talk about the 2-second lip job that he landed on Overeem in a fight that he would have lost had he not landed that lip job. So I think that 4-fight win streak Biggie Boy went on initially is a little bit misleading, and the 7-5 overall UFC record that he has since demonstrated is a little bit more fitting for the talent that Biggie Boy is bringing at 35 years old, because this guy's lost 3 of 4, and his only win was against Chris Daukaus. So what are your thoughts on this meatlock? How do you think Happy Shmeal gets this one absolutely done, easy light work over Biggie Bag, and is it going to be earlier and often?
Oh yeah, I think Happy Shmeal is going to absolutely ragdoll Biggie Boy. I mean, Biggie Boy, he's had some very nice wins here and there, but in the end, he's what we all thought he was. He's an absolute bum. And it's time for the bum to go to the BFL, the Bellator, whatever's going on over there. And honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if he becomes the heavyweight champion once Francis is done over there. But yeah, it seems like this is a clear-cut path to, a top 5 fight for this guy. He beats Biggie Boy, then a top 5, then possibly title, depending on how everything goes. Very excited to see this. This should be a fun one.
Yeah, it should be fun and definitely an easy path for Shmeal to take Biggie Boy's spot in the rankings. And I love where your head's at. I mean, Biggie Boy's 35 years old, so if he headed straight over to PFL, I mean, he probably instantly becomes, besides Francis, the best fighter on the roster. So definitely a potential career path alteration for Biggie Boy. He probably knows, all right, I'm getting fed another hungry Russian killer in this one, and then I'm going to fight out my UFC contract and simply go dominate over in PFL at Tour for sure. But one reason that really gives us bullishness on Shmeal is the fact that Biggie Boy, when he keeps losing, it's 2 guys with a similar fighting style as Shmeal, right? Jailton Almeida, while he's primarily known for his jiu-jitsu, he's got a very top-heavy approach where he takes guys down, he keeps guys down, and that's exactly what happened to Biggie Boy. Alexander Volkov, same thing. Volkov takes him down, straight arm lock, easy light work, and a TKO ultimately over Volkov. And then that fight against Curtis Blades was 3-round dominance, start to finish. Although Curtis couldn't get the finish, it was more discouraging stuff from Biggie Boy. So from a guy like Happy Shmeal, who is trying to do the same essentially, take you down, keep you down, this just seems like a bad recipe for Biggie Boy, and ultimately no Happy Shmeal toy for him nonetheless. So we're keeping it simple, Meat Boys. We're going to be throwing down 155. It's going to net 100, get us our 90-second meat lock, keep us well within the green, keep our streak alive. I mean, we thought Rosas would be the one to do it last week, but he had a little bit of a tummy issue. I don't envision that same tummy issue from Shmeal. So I'm going Shmeal. I'm going by early finish. Do you think that it's first or second round, Meat Boy?
Yeah, honestly, I think it's first round finish for sure. When it comes to these big boys, especially when you have Happy Shmeal on board, it's a first round finish, absolutely.
Yeah, first round for sure, and we know that the price for the Happy Shmeal these days is simply more affordable than it is for a Biggie Bag bum. So transition us over to that next one, Meat Boy. We got another undefeated fighter, your boy Javid Basharat, who is 14-0, 3-0 in the UFC, and most recently he did pick up a no contest, right? It was that weird fight against Victor Henry where he was pretty much dominating and then really just caught him with a flush. Rough shot to the groin, so to speak, and Victor Henry had to leave the contest. So officially it was a no contest, but that looked to me like Javid was just going to be picking up another win like he has been doing in the UFC thus far. He is kind of a decision machine, right? Trevin Jones, Tony Gravely, and Mateus Mendonca, all decision victories, so it doesn't seem like he's much of a finisher, at least quite yet, but he's taking on Ayman Zahabi as a fat favorite in this one, around -600, and Ayman Zahabi, meanwhile, is on a nice little sneaky 3-fight win streak himself, and he's got some wins over Draco Rodriguez, awful, Ricky Turcios, pretty bad, and then Arichi Lang, who loves to lose fights also, but nonetheless, it's 4-2 for Firas Zahabi's younger brother, 10-2 overall. Any life for the Canadian Zahabi in this one, or is this another easy light work victory for your boy Javid Basharat?
Javid Bashrat, this is the real rat. There's a reason why he's minus 600, and yeah, this is gonna be easy light work. I think he could get a KO. I think it might be a submission though, first or second round. Um, I mean, there's really not much to say. Look at the odds. You already know the Rat King is here. This is the true rat, not the fake brother rat. This guy is possibly the future champ. That's how I see it.
Yeah, this is the Snow Leopard officially, and his brother's having some success as well in the UFC. It does, however, seem that Javid might be the real rat, the one with the true long withstanding potential. But you never know, because both these Basher bros have definitely been shutting me up. I was a Basher detractor for a while, but they keep picking up W's, so I haven't been able to lob much criticism that way. But you did mention Meat Boy, which I'm going to question a little bit. You said first or second round finish for Javid. I mean, this guy recently has proven unable to finish even a half of a sandwich. So how are you expecting him to be able to pick an early finish in this one?
Well, the opponent that he is facing is kind of a bum. So I think he's just going to put him out pretty easily. You know, I don't know. He's been knocked out before. He can get knocked out again, but he's never been submitted. So I think Javid is going to surprise him with that. I don't think this guy's really faced anyone at the grappling or jiu-jitsu level that Basharat is. This is the Rat King once again, and the Rat shall prevail.
Yeah, we haven't seen Zahabi face many grapplers, and to that point, I'm still curious to see Javid's full game because he's great with the strikes, he's great with the takedowns, but I want to see him take that next level and start picking up those finishes on the ground, and perhaps this is the opponent to do just that. Eamon Zahabi's only been finished once. It was by that gnarly spinning back elbow from Ricardo Ramos, which really just froze the face of Zahabi and was pretty brutal, to be honest with you. But maybe if you call this one, Meat Boy, for the Rat King to pick up a finish, then that would be a major fern in your cap for sure. But if you look at Tapology, 96% is rolling with the real Rat, only 4% is going with Zahabi, and basically all the 96% for Bashrat is decision. It's beige, so I'm going to roll with that. I'm going to take Bashrat by decision. I don't envision this fight to be very close, but I also struggle to believe that Basharat will ever finish a fight. So I'm going to go Basharat by decision. Any last thoughts on this one?
No, this is a fun fight. Let us know if this is the real rat or if it's a fake rat. And then yeah, let's just jump into the next one.
Yeah, let's jump it on over. Umar's next, Meat Boy. Umar Nurmagomedov, who is 4-0 in the UFC, 16-0. He's got the last name, he's got the hype, he seemingly has all the potential, and is taking on a debutante in this one, strangely enough. 17-1 is Beksat Almakhan, who is actually the #1 ranked fighter in Uzbekistan and is a fighter who has a lot of UFC potential, I think. I mean, this is probably going to be too much too soon having to face Umar in your debut, but if we look at the wins that Beksat was picking up, it was against some pretty talented guys with decent records over there. So I wonder if at, plus 675 is Beksat and minus 1050 is Umar, if this is potentially a fight to lay a dollar or two on Beksat, but you got to imagine that the UFC is setting up Umar with another free W and should get him his 5th in a row. But what are your thoughts on the matchmaking in this one? But before you even break it down, are you at all surprised, discouraged? What's your reaction to Umar Nurmagomedov, a guy who was supposed to be fighting Corey Sandhagen at some point last year, is suddenly now fighting some debutante no name? I mean, what's the UFC thinking with this one? What's the angle?
Yeah, either A, they really believe in this no name and he smashes Umar, which is going to be crazy to see, or B, they're just giving Umar absolute potato cans. And I think it's not Umar's fault. I think nobody will accept a fight with him. And I think this is the only kid that would ever accept a fight. He's like, oh, my chance at the UFC, sure, I'll take anyone, just get me in there. And maybe he pulls the upset off, but I don't know. I don't really. It's not like this is gonna help him build his career. So this isn't like a Tony versus Umar type of fight where they did Tony Ferguson versus Paddy the Baddy, like to build him with a name, right? So this kid must be pretty good, but I would imagine Umar's just next level. And I don't think this kid understands what he's getting himself into. He does have one loss, which is pretty impressive. 4-2 wins, one loss. Submission is his loss. I'm predicting Umar gets that sub also.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the most shocking thing for sure if Umar picks up another sub in this one. 96% is rolling with Tapology is taking Umar, and majority of it is Copper, so they agree. They think the sub is most likely, especially given Bakazat's previous deficiencies in that regard. But just an interesting fight from a matchmaking perspective for sure. But I think you probably hit the nail on the head. This just seems like a fighter that, besides Corey Sandhagen, no one is willing to step up and face. And it's very interesting that they can't even find a guy already on the roster for him. That they have to go out to Uzbekistan and drag Bekzat out of the muck, so to speak, to get Umar an opponent. So that to me is pretty crazy. And kudos to Bekzat, because you're right. While he probably was itching to get any opportunity, I could still see some situations where a guy's manager might be like, "Ooh, like yes, it's an opportunity, but it's." I mean, you're essentially a can going in to get smashed against Umar, which technically will be an automatic L seemingly, but maybe Bekzat fights closer and really makes a name for himself. I mean, sometimes these guys will come into the UFC. Who's the guy? Who's the green-haired kid that lost to Sean O'Malley?
Um, uh, Moitan or
Moutinho,
Chris
Moutinho,
Moutinho.
right? Chris
Yes, Chris
Moutinho
Moutinho.
goes out there, eats 500 punches, and earned himself 100,000 followers and a couple more UFC fights. So even a loss, my point being is that you can still make a name for yourself against a very tough guy, and he probably will do that in this one. But got to go Umar. The pick is obviously him. At minus 1050 though, there's probably no value for the money line or even a parlay perspective on that one. But maybe you take Umar and the under point 0.5 or the under 1.5. Hope that he gets it done early and often, but that could even be a clincher because you never know with this Bekzat wild card. So I'm going to go Umar. I'm ultimately going to say Umar gets a second round finish in this one, but going to be keeping the minus 1050 out of the parlays for sure. Any last thoughts on this one?
No, 100% agree with you right there. Definitely avoiding this one, but obviously toss him in a little doinker parlay with all the other favorites, it seems.
Yeah, you never know. And another interesting one, Meat Boy, and we can just transition right over into it, is Matt Schnell versus Steve Erceg, aka Astro Boy. And the first thing that jumps out to me on this fight is that these guys are very similar stylistically, size-wise, they're pretty comparable, and both these guys are just epitomize grit and toughness. Like they may not be the most athletic guys in the UFC, but as far as the heart is concerned, both these dudes absolutely come to fight. And the first thing that jumps out to me are the odds, Meat Boy, and I want to get your perspective on them. Steve Erceg is minus 325, plus 260 is Matt Schnell, and Matt Schnell is a guy who has double-digit UFC fights versus Steve Erceg, who yes is 2-0 in the UFC and yes has been winning some great unanimous decisions. I don't know if he's faced the level of competition that Matt Schnell has to date, because Matt Schnell's been in there with literally everyone, right? He's been in there with Pantoja, been in there with Bontarim, Roy Val, Nicolau, Sumudarji. I mean, he's been in there with some pretty tough guys and has even beat some of them. So, what are your thoughts right away on the odds? Are you surprised that Steve Erceg is a 3-1 favorite, or is he that good and Matt Schnell is that done?
You know, man, if he's that good and he beats Matt Schnell, especially if he dominates him, I'm gonna be all aboard Astro Boy train. Astro Boy is very good, but man, Matt Schnell's no joke. I mean, like his pace, he's relentless. He never gives up. He's like getting finished, but then he flips the script, and then you're getting finished. So unless Steve can absolutely outstrength him, outgrit him, outcardio him, I don't know. I just don't know if Steve gets it done. I like Matt Schnell in this. I like that he's a dog. I'm a dog chaser, and I feel like this is a 50-50 fight. Unless I'm just absolutely missing it, and Steve is apparently the freaking GOAT, but I'm just not sold yet. So I'm gonna take Matt Schnell in this because I know the competition he's fought. I know it's always been close, and this guy hasn't fought anyone like you said. He hasn't fought anyone near as good as Matt Schnell has.
Yeah, so when you really break down Steve Erceg, right? I mean, he was the eternal MMA flyweight champ over in Australia, but who did he win the belt off of? Shannon Ross, aka the guy who has 4 fights in the UFC yet has never gone past 1 total minute of fight experience somehow, and you'll have to do the math on that one, but nonetheless, not the greatest win. And then his UFC wins, David Dvorak, another guy in the UFC who was initially hyped up a lot, but has really kind of exposed himself lately. And then Alessandro Costa after that. And that fight was a little bit closer than the fight against Dvorak. I mean, that fight that Erceg put on Dvorak was impressive. He really dominated him, but but that Costa contest was a little bit closer. And then I love what you mentioned about Matt Schnell. Even when this guy is flirting with unconsciousness, he always just has like a sliver of the heart left and finds ways to come back. I mean, that fight against Sumo Darji where he earned fight of the night, that fight he was literally about to get finished. Sumu was a half punch away from putting him into the void, and he remained conscious and ended up getting the finish himself. So Matt Schnell is a tough guy to put out. And then that fight against Royval was pretty similar right before that, where if I'm not mistaken, Schnell had Royval in a lot of danger and ends up getting finished himself. So Matt Schnell goes up and down. Sometimes he wins those fights, sometimes he loses them. But I don't know, for a guy like Urseg who is basically a decision machine, it's going to be interesting to me to see if he can win a decision against Matt Schnell, because I don't know if Urseg has the power or the finishing abilities in order to put out Matt Schnell, and if he has to go 15 minutes with this guy, what will that look like? I don't know, but Tapology has seen it awfully one-sided for Urseg Meat Boy. 91% is going with Astro Boy Scuba Steve, and 9% is going with Schnell. So what's the official pick? Is it Matt Schnell by decision or finish? And give me your thoughts on Tapology.
Yeah, I think Matt Schnell does get the finish. I think it's TKO. I think it's on the ground. I think it's third round. I think Matt might get destroyed a little bit in the beginning, but then as time prevails, Matt will keep that cardio, that pace going and relentless. I like these odds. I like Matt's durability. And I don't think Stevie Boy has ever been tested, so this is a good one for him. And I mean, these odds are just pretty good for Matt, and we might not see them like that ever again unless he fights, a top fiver.
Yeah, good stuff. And I've been going back and forth. I know all the Steve Urseg Meat Boys are going to be coming out at full force on us, Meat Boy, and because we know that they are passionate, the Astro Boy backers. But your boy Meat is going with Schnell, and your boy is fading Astro Boy and is riding with you all the way. Let's go Meat Schnell, Meat Boy. Perhaps he's able to get this one done as a dog. I'm gonna be taking Matt Schnell by decision because I think the plus 600 life that you're going to be getting there. I mean, the money line's already juicy enough. If you're getting Matt Schnell against Urseg for about plus 260, that to me screams value. So that's the play nonetheless, but I do think that decision will be the pathway if he is able to capitalize as a dog. So let's go Meat Schnell, Meat Boy. Let's go all over this dog and this one, and we can deal with the Astro Boy backers later. So any last thoughts on this one? And Perez Makayev next. What are you thinking?
Yeah, no, Perez Makayev, this one's absolutely crazy. This is a true levels test for Makayev, I think. Perez is no joke. I mean, he's fought everyone, right? He's a very well-rounded, very good fighter. He's been in the game for a bit. Kind of the perfect opponent for Makayev to kind of boost his confidence, boost his level, and get a bigger name. Alex Perez looks really good on that resume once he defeats him. I think Makayev is going to run right through him.
Yeah, it is a good resume building name for sure. Alex Perez is 7-3 in the UFC, and this is a guy where the wins aren't the most formidable opponents, but at the time they were pretty decent wins, right? Jussier Formiga, Jordan Espinoza, Mark De La Rosa, Eric Shelton, all guys that at the time Perez beat them, they had some UFC name and some clout for sure, but the whole thing with Alex Perez is when he beat those guys, because this guy seemingly pulls out of most fights he's scheduled to compete in, and most of those fights were in the late 2010s, whereas since 2020, this guy has pulled out of about 3 or 4 different fights for various reasons, and we haven't even seen him in the cage since 2022 when he got absolutely smoked in 90 seconds by Pantoja on a main card in a huge fight for him, and he really just did not show up and essentially hasn't shown up since then, and we're going on almost 2 years ago was that fight. So my first question to you, Meat Boy, it sounds like you're picking Makayev, but do you think that Alex Perez is going to even, I don't want to say show up because things happen and you never want to go too hard on these guys because life happens, but is Alex Perez going to end up fighting on Saturday?
Now that you say it like that, I don't know. I would honestly pull a Rosas also and get the tummy tickles of nerves and bail within 3 minutes of walking out. I could absolutely see that because Makayev has a crazy diehard fan base. It's getting big, but it's not there yet. And the heat from his fans are gonna come at Alex Perez, and I think it's just going to really make him nervous. I mean, Alex Perez doesn't lose to anybody but champions. Um, and but he's not that active recently, so I don't know. Either this is gonna be a new and improved Alex Perez, and it's gonna be a good dogfight, or he's not gonna show up, and he's just gonna bail on this because hasn't fought in a while. The nerves are gonna get to him. Makayev is no joke. I wouldn't want to fight him, and he's undefeated. And Alex Perez is probably getting cut to go to BKFC. So I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't show up. But hopefully he does. Hopefully he has some dignity, some honor, and he shows up to get mauled by Makayev.
Yeah, I do hope he shows up. And just for the record, this is Monday, February 26th. Me saying that Perez might not show up. So if and when this guy does pull out in a couple days, let the record reflect it is in fact Monday, Meat Boy. But nonetheless, you mentioned, perhaps he does show up. Perhaps the dog comes out, and he is the dog according to Vegas. He's plus 250, minus 310 is Makayev. And you touched on the undefeated record of Makayev. He's 11-0 and has some nice finishes. I mean, most recently to pick up a finish against Tim Elliott and earn yourself performance of the night really was a great testament to his development. And that was a fight where he was seeing some danger. I think a lot of people actually thought Tim Elliott was en route to potentially winning a decision in that one before Makayev picked up that third round finish. So it shows you that he can come back and really compete and pick up finishes even when his back up against the wall. And we saw that against Jafel Filio. I was there live, Meat Boy. I was at the O2. We had meat-locked Makayev, and Jafel Filio was seemingly seconds away from spoiling our meat-lock. But Makayev had the rubber elbow, finds a way to get out of it, and ultimately gets a finish himself. So Makayev is no joke. And again, if and when Alex Perez shows up on Saturday and he does bring his best dog out of him, I still don't think it'll be enough to compete with Muhammad Makayev because, like you said, Perez loves to lose to champs, and to me, it seems like Makayev is on the short list of contenders who, if not champion by the end of 2023, 2024 is probably going to be the Makayev season because I always reference it, but Tom Aspinall is a guy who's been working with Makayev since Makayev was essentially a kid, and he says that Muhammad Makayev has carried this championship energy around him since he was like 12 years old. So if Tom Aspinall, who in my opinion is one of the best fighters in the world right now, says that about you when you're 12 years old, that's probably a scary thing for other flyweights in the division. So let's go Makayev in this one. I'm taking him by finish. And yeah, any last thoughts on this?
No, this is a great fight though. True levels test for Makayev, and is Perez keeping his job or not? I guess we'll stay tuned and find out this weekend.
Yeah, stay tuned to find out. I mean, whether he shows up and loses or doesn't show up at all, you wonder if the days are numbered either way. But nonetheless, it's another one, Meat Boy, who at one point someone thought his days could be numbered since he was suffering from such a long layoff. That being Tyson Pedro, who is 10-4 overall, 6-4 in the UFC. But he's 3-1 since his return from, again, that 4-year layoff. Because if you remember, this was a guy who 2017, 2018, Tyson Pedro was going on a little bit of a tear. He picked up finishes over Khalil Roundtree and Paul Craig, and a lot of people thought that this guy might challenge for a belt at some point, but he suffered some catastrophic injuries, missed a lot of time, and since that 4-year layoff, he is 3-1. He's picked up some wins. We've meat-locked him here and there. He easy light work finished Ike Villanueva, took out Harry Hunsucker, and again, if you see Harry Hunsuck, you hammer the opponent, and also beat Anton Turkoglu, and the only loss in between there was against Modestas Bukauskas. So what are your thoughts on Tyson Pedro? He's fighting Vitor Petrino, who is undefeated, one of these up-and-coming Brazilian fighters who have a lot of hype, and the guy's 3-0 in the UFC and is about a minus 290 is Petrino in this contest, and getting a co-meet opportunity. So what are your thoughts on Petrino versus Pedro? Are you taking Pedro to be a levels test essentially for Petrino, or is Petrino going to smoke him?
You know, I think Petrino is going to smoke him, to be honest. This is a fun fight. I wouldn't even consider it a levels test because Petrino knocked out Bukauskas, the Baltic Gladiator, and Baltic Gladiator beat Tyson Pedro and Zach Puig, the super heavyweight that dropped down to 205 to get smoked by this bum. Beat them both by decision, and those are pretty good levels tests in themselves. And then he gets snuffed by Victor Petrino. So I think one touch of doom. Tyson's getting knocked out early and often. I feel bad for the Aussie boys, but But yeah, he's gonna go back and hang out with the Feather Boy.
Yeah, didn't I wasn't sure Zach Paga would get a shout out in this one. Shout out to Diesel, who was trying to tell me the other day that Zach Paga is truly terrible, but nonetheless, I thought Paga was fake okay. But yeah, he got smoked by Vitor. Vitor then gets smoked by Bukowskis. It does, however, it does become a lot of MMA math though. So any chance that Tyson Pedro, I mean, again, this guy has 10 UFC fights, those vaulted wins against Paul Craig, Khalil Roundtree. Any chance that he keeps this one standing and has some success there? I mean, we've seen Vitor; he's kind of has a decent game on both the ground and on the feet. So I guess my question is, if Pedro somehow shows him to be a levels test, where is he having some success in this fight?
Pedro needs to keep it on the feet to get this done. He needs to last to the third round because it does seem that there is a gas tank issue. I think Petrino lacks the gas in the third round, but it's weird. It's like, oh no, he's gassing, but yet he keeps going. Like he kind of reminds me of Dricus du Plessis on the gas tank. We're like, oh, he's about to tap out because of tiredness, and then the second wind kicks in. The dude's an absolute specimen. He's a young lad, and very high hopes for him. I can't wait to see what he does, but I think this is honestly easy work for Victor. And I think the only way Victor loses is if it goes to decision and he gets gassed out on the feet. I think if it goes to the ground, I think he gets an easy sub versus Pedro, to be honest.
Yeah, good stuff. I like the Dricus du Plessis comp as far as just it seems like he's running on E, has nothing left. He has to, probably get slept in the next 5 seconds, yet somehow is able to maintain that last bit of juice and somehow has a little bit more juice in the end than the other guy. It's really a crazy thing to see, but we've seen it from Vitor Petrino for sure. And if you look at Tapology Report, 89% is rolling with iCal, Petrino, Vitor. A lot of Brown for the KO, so they think he's going to be trying to make a statement down on the ground versus Pedro. Like maybe he takes him down and just absolutely brutalizes the Australian fighter, but who knows on that one. 11% though has Tyson Pedro, and all the Tyson backers have him by KO. So any life for that KO for Petrino, if not the sub?
Yeah, I mean the dude has absolute coconut bombs in those fists. He can get a KO in the first exchange. Pedro has been knocked out. Pedro has a very sus chin, and I think Victor's gonna get a pretty easy win for sure by finish.
Yeah, I'm with you, me boy. I'm gonna go Vitor by finish. Perhaps this fight is over earlier than anticipated to maybe the under 1.5 cashes, because perhaps Vitor can go out there and really make a statement over Tyson Pedro in a fight that really just, to me, highlights how quickly the game of MMA and just the UFC specifically moves. Like Tyson Pedro in this fight is the 32-year-old double-digit fight veteran, essentially, and fighting against Vitor Petrino, who is 26, has all this hype, some say future champ, and is essentially exactly where Tyson Pedro was just 6 years ago. But now, I mean, the game moves on. Tyson Pedro still has his job, but he's probably getting fed to the Lions in this one. So I'm with you, me boy. I'm going to go Vitor by early finish. Any last thoughts on this fight card? And before we close out, me boy, it was a six banger today. What do you think your record going into next week will be? What do you go 6-0 this week? You going 5-1? What are you doing for this UFC Apex card?
I'm bound to lose one. Perfect records only happen, once on a blue moon. So, I think I will go 5-1 on this one.
5-1 for you. I'm saying 5-1 for me as well, Meat Boy. But perhaps it's another 12-0 banger because we've been there before. So let us know, Meat Boys, who you're taking. Do you agree with the meat lock? Are we sleeping on Steve Urseg? Comment any overall thoughts and let us know the thoughts, Meat Boys. Been real.